The city outside was alive, neon lights blinking against the night, streets buzzing with chatter and music. But inside the sleek black van, there was only stillness. No words, no laughter, no playful bickering that usually filled their car rides. Only the quiet hum of the engine and the sound of rain softly tapping against the tinted windows. Taehyung sat by the window, his face half hidden by the shadow of his hoodie. His eyes followed the blurred shapes of passing streetlights, almost as if he was afraid to look anywhere else. Across from him, Jungkook leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, eyes closed. But his posture wasn't relaxed, his jaw was tight, and the faint crease between his brows said everything. It wasn't anger. It wasn't exactly sadness either. It was something heavier, something both of them had been carrying for weeks, maybe months. Earlier that evening, they had performed in front of thousands. The stage had roared with energy, the crowd had screamed their names, and for a moment, everything had been as perfect as it always looked from the outside. But the truth is, the moments backstage had been different. There had been a misunderstanding, one of those small things that wouldn't matter to anyone else but somehow dug deep between them. And now, here they were. Side by side in the same vehicle, yet separated by miles of silence. The driver glanced at them through the rearview mirror once or twice, perhaps sensing the tension. But no one said a word. The city kept rolling past, the van moving like a ghost through the rain-slick streets. Jungkook's eyes eventually opened, not to speak, but to watch Taehyung. It wasn't a casual glance, it was lingering, almost searching. He noticed the way Taehyung's fingers curled tightly in his lap, the way his lips pressed together as if holding back something. Jungkook's chest tightened. He wanted to ask if Taehyung was okay. He wanted to break the silence. But the words caught in his throat. Instead, something unspoken passed between them. A quiet acknowledgement. Taehyung finally turned his head, and their eyes met. It was only for a second, but it felt like a storm breaking in slow motion. Neither of them smiled, yet there was a softness there, a recognition of the bond they shared, one that didn't always need words. The rain outside grew heavier, streaking the windows with silver trails. In the dim light, Jungkook noticed that Taehyung's gaze had dropped to his hands. Without thinking, Jungkook reached out across the small space between them. His hand hovered for a moment, hesitating, before finally resting on Taehyung's wrist. It was a small touch, barely there, but Taehyung didn't pull away. His breath caught, not from surprise, but from the quiet relief of knowing that Jungkook understood without needing an explanation. The driver took a turn, and the city lights blurred into a warm haze. The rest of the world felt far away. For the first time that night, Taehyung's shoulders loosened, and Jungkook felt something shift between them. The tension didn't vanish entirely, but it softened into something more bearable, a fragile truce in the dark. Neither of them spoke for the rest of the ride. But in that silence, so much was said. Because sometimes the loudest conversations happen without a single word. Sometimes, it's in the shared stillness, in the way you can sit next to someone, hear nothing, and still know exactly what's in their heart. When the van finally pulled up to their hotel, Jungkook was the first to move. He stepped out, holding the door open just a little longer than necessary as Taehyung followed. Their eyes met again under the glow of the street lamp. This time, it wasn't stormy, it was steady, almost calm. And as they walked into the building side by side, a thought lingered unspoken between them. Whatever had been broken tonight was already beginning to mend. That silent car ride became one of those rare moments that lived only between the two of them, invisible to the cameras, untouched by the world, yet unforgettable. Because in the end, it wasn't the words that mattered. It was the quiet, the rain, the unshaken presence of someone who didn't need you to speak to understand you completely. For those who saw them later that week, laughing again, leaning into each other during interviews, sharing inside jokes, it would seem as though nothing had happened. But for Taehyung and Jungkook, that night in the car was a reminder. A reminder that their connection didn't need to be spoken out loud to be real. It lived in the silences. It thrived in the moments when the world faded away, and it was just them, side by side, holding on to something unbreakable. And maybe, just maybe, the rain had been listening too. The rain had a rhythm that night, a slow, deliberate tapping against the van's windows, almost in sync with the quiet, stubborn heartbeats of the two men inside. The city outside flashed and pulsed with color, but inside the vehicle, everything was muted, stripped down to shadows, breath, and the occasional squeak of the windshield wipers. Taehyung sat on the left, angled slightly toward the glass, his face reflected faintly in it. The streetlights cast fleeting glows across his features, a cheekbone here, the curve of his lips there, before disappearing again into darkness. He wasn't sulking. No, this was different. He was protecting something. Guarding his expression as if speaking would let it spill out, uncontrolled. On the other side, Jungkook shifted in his seat. Not much, just enough to stretch his legs. But it wasn't really about comfort, it was restlessness. The kind that comes when you want to speak but know the wrong word might turn the silence into something sharp. His eyes stayed shut for a while longer, though he wasn't sleeping. His senses were too aware of Taehyung's presence, the faint smell of his cologne, the sound of his breathing, the occasional shift of his hoodie's fabric. For the driver, the air was heavy, though he didn't dare break it. This wasn't the playful, chaotic energy he'd seen from them countless times before. This was still water. Deep and unreadable. Jungkook's hand rested on his knee, fingers drumming lightly, 1-2, 1-2. He stopped, opened his eyes, and glanced at the figure across from him. Taehyung hadn't moved, but his gaze wasn't fixed outside anymore. It was downward, somewhere between his lap and the floor, as if searching for answers there. Their eyes met. Just for an instant. It was brief, almost clumsy, but it carried more weight than any lyric they had ever sung together. Jungkook caught the faint glimmer in Taehyung's gaze, not quite a tear, but a shine, like light caught in deep water. In that second, Jungkook remembered the countless times they'd been here before, not in a van, but in this same silent space between words. Years of friendship, brotherhood, arguments, reconciliations all compressed into the flicker of a glance. The rain intensified, drumming harder against the roof. Somewhere in the distance, a horn blared, but neither of them flinched. Jungkook's fingers twitched again, restless, wanting to bridge the space between them. His chest felt tight, not from anger, not even from guilt, but from the frustration of knowing that what he wanted to say couldn't be packaged neatly into words. He'd never been the type to talk about feelings easily. Taehyung knew that. But the problem was, Taehyung was the same. The driver took a sharp turn, and for a brief moment, Taehyung's arm brushed against Jungkook's. It was accidental, barely a graze, but it made Jungkook's breath hitch. He turned his head slightly, testing the air between them, and then, before his courage slipped away, he moved his hand. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't grab or pull. He simply placed his hand on Taehyung's wrist. Just enough for the warmth of skin to pass between them. Taehyung froze for a heartbeat. Not in resistance, in realization. The kind that makes your eyes sting because you didn't know how much you needed that small contact until it happened. His shoulders lowered a fraction, his fingers uncurling slightly in his lap. Jungkook didn't look at him directly. Instead, he stared at the blurred cityscape outside, pretending he wasn't silently pleading for Taehyung to understand. And Taehyung did. He always did. The touch stayed there light, steady until the van slowed for a red light. The glow from a street lamp painted them both in gold for a moment, and in that strange, temporary warmth, Taehyung finally lifted his gaze toward Jungkook. This time, Jungkook met it fully. No smile. No smirk. Just that steady, open look, the one they'd shared countless times before on stage, in hotel hallways, in green rooms, when words would have been too heavy to carry. A faint exhale escaped Taehyung, almost a laugh but quieter. Something in Jungkook's chest loosened at the sound. The light turned green, the van moved on, and the rain softened again, as if the world was taking a breath with them. When they finally reached the hotel, Jungkook stepped out first, holding the door longer than usual. Taehyung's hood slipped back slightly in the wind, revealing more of his face, still unreadable to anyone else, but to Jungkook, there was a softness now, a fragile peace. They didn't speak as they walked through the lobby. They didn't need to. Because in that silent ride, in the rain, in the smallest touch of a hand, they had already said everything. And that was enough. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more emotional and dramatic BTS moments that the world needs to know.